All right, hello everyone. This is the November 15th, I guess, 2022 SIG Node meeting. Looking over the agenda today, let's just get started. First topic on here was from Giuseppe and Rata around user namespace support and how they want to proceed. Do you want to come forward with a recommendation or thoughts, and we can have a discussion? Do we have everyone on the call? Ronald, do you know if Giuseppe was going to join or?
Probably not, but Rodrigo is on the call and they are looking for a recommendation. And I think it should be a separate cap. Rodrigo, you're on mute.
Yeah, I guess maybe Rodrigo was having audio problems, but I would recommend it be a separate cap and separate feature gate, honestly.
Yeah. Yep.
Just because making one tied to the other is probably just going to delay the core use case that we started making progress on from getting through the process. So that would be my view. But yeah, Rodrigo, if you can chime in when your audio is fixed, or if you're fine with that outcome, let us know.
Yeah, I think one point would be whether you want to GA user namespace and current scope, so we can at least apply, like, force user namespace on very simple pods. That may be interesting outcome as well.
I think we should move to beta for the existing one in parallel for sure.
Yeah, when I said GA, I meant like, do you want to proceed on like making it more official? Thank you.
Right,
yeah,
so
I think
maybe give a second for Rodrigo to get back here, but to echo your point, Renal, I think what was actually put in alpha is a useful community user feature that, assuming we have no issues as we go through beta, should graduate. I think stateful support is a separate topic, and we can explore the depths on that. And lots of stateless workloads in the world is how I look at it. So, maybe Rodrigo, when he comes back in a second, can give his thoughts. Or maybe just I don't know if there's any vendors or users who would find interest in the current user namespace support as it is stateless, but I know at least with my Red Hat on, the scope of the existing feature is useful for the user community we're serving. Sure, you feel
I don't have the Red Hat hat. I also think about that's useful feature for community. Even Google, nobody really looking at that one, work on that one. But I do think from the open source community and the security perspective, that's useful features. We should move forward.
Yeah, cool.
Sorry, I just joined. My audio wasn't working. Can you recap?
Yeah, Rodrigo, we can hear you now. So basically, recap was what was started now in alpha is super useful and should see its way to graduation without being complicated with additional use cases. And as we explore stateful use cases, I think the initial recommendation is to do that as a separate cap and a separate feature gate.
Okay, but I think for the previous PR, like the validation, for example, for the field was not okay to depend on a feature gate. I think Jordan mentioned that. So like right now we are only adding the host users field, and that if you set it to true, you use the host users, and otherwise you use a different user namespace. So in the validation, we're checking that, for example, the volumes are the ones supported only for phase one, that are config maps and these ephemeral kind of volumes. If the validation field cannot depend on a feature gate being enabled, then we'll just have to remove that, and then we will not validate that you're using a supported volume Like,
Yeah.
so we're kind of creating some dependency between the caps or something like that. Or maybe a not so clear error when you only enable stateless pods and you submit a pod with a volume, then where things will happen. Like also right now.
Was it just that the literal validation.go code path can't use a feature gate, or was it in the like the prepare for create or prepare for update code path you can't use a feature gate? Because I think there might be a difference
Okay.
depending on where in that code path it was. So if you have a pointer to maybe Jordan's comment, we can maybe get some clarification, but I feel like my own memory going through this that I had thought that if this was in like a prepare for create flow, it should be fine, or prepare for update flow.
Okay. Okay, and the other thing is that during the, like, we asked for an exception to merge the PR. During that exception to solve some concerns from SIG storage, we ended up doing things like using FS group for config maps and secrets to have the proper permission. But using FS group is basically horrible because it forces to have group permissions to those files. There's no other way currently in Kubernetes. And so basically, with the solution that we implemented before, that was the secret file should have the proper owner that have concerns for SIG storage, and then we have FS group. Then if we continue with this solution, then basically you cannot have files like SSH keys when you enable user namespaces, because most libraries and applications check that, for example, the permissions of the private key are only for the user and not there's none for the group. So what I was thinking in that regards is that I was discussing with Giuseppe that basically the only easy way to solve all this concern from SIG storage is to rely on ID map mounts. That is a kernel feature that was merged in 5.15 but requires each file system that you're using to support it. So if we just change our implementation to require ID map mounts, I think all the concern from SIG storage will be solved, even if we require it for stateless pods. The disadvantage, of course, is that we need kernel changes for stateless pods, but we're also solving other issues, like, for example, right now, etc host or etc result.conf and those files are owned by root on the host. So when you're running with user namespace, you cannot modify those files. It's not a big deal, but it's an inconsistency with what you can do when you're not running with user namespaces. And if we adopt also ID map mounts, all of those concerns should be solved. So I was planning to join SIG storage and chat with them and see if this indeed solves all the use cases, but we're discussing with Giuseppe that probably that is the way forward, but I don't know what you think here. We'll be requiring an up-to-date kernel, basically.
I think like you may be aware, Rodrigo, but I think like it's ID mapped mounts aren't enabled in RHEL, and Giuseppe and I are talking with the kernel engineers there. So they have expressed some security concerns, and we are trying to figure out like if those can be addressed upstream. But I mean, like if there aren't any issues, like ID map mounts do make sense to solve a lot of the cases we have here.
Yeah, I was talking with Giuseppe and he was saying me that, yeah, he thinks like not using the kernel functionality to solve these problems seems silly to him. But yeah, if you're okay with this, I can try to join some SIG storage weekly and discuss further with SIG storage fault if this solves the concerns.
So I guess, Rodrigo, thanks for all the background. And I'm glad your audio got to work, because we had missed that in the beginning when giving our initial thoughts. I think would you summarize your view is that if you can safely use this kernel feature, you would want to couple the existing capability with the usage of that kernel feature and not want to do a separate feature gate or a separate,
No. I think I would like to have the current functionality with ID map mounts, and a different or the same feature gate for me is, I don't have a strong opinion there. Whatever is okay for the technicalities of validating the fields in here and there, whatever is simpler or whatever is possible. But I think, yeah, if SIG storage confirms that this solves all the issues for them, I would like to implement stateless pod support with ID map mounts too, because there are some issues that we have today, as I was saying, like etc host, etc resolve.conf, and all those bind mounts. That it will be a lot of plumbing to teach the kubelet to change the ownership of all those files too. Right now we're only doing with secrets and all that stuff, but if we just add ID map mounts, basically all mounts will be mapped, so we don't need to teach every part of the kubelet that might create a file to create a file with different permissions when user namespaces are there. And of course, doing this right now will not close the gate, like will not close the door to do it in the future if we say, yeah, we're gonna backward ID map mounts to some kernel that we really need to, and we can explore all these fixes or having some limitations, but we can still go back to this code if we need it for some specific use cases, I think.
right. So it sounds like there's a set of forward discussions that need to happen. Should we just plan to revisit this then in the next, 3 weeks or so?
Yeah.
See what a recommendation would be. But I think for everyone here, Rodrigo, I think to the macro question on stateful pods, I think there's large scale agreement that just even having user namespace support on stateless pods is a very beneficial feature for the community and the users that are using the platform. So if one becomes more complicated, I think we should still look to satisfy the stateless use case. And it seems like that was generally agreed upon when, I don't know if you could hear us or we couldn't hear you. So
yeah, right.
Okay. Anything else we want to talk on this then?
No. So my next step will be to join SIG storage. I haven't checked their calendar, and then talk with them and come back to here with my findings, if that seems fine.
Awesome.
Cool. For stateless spots too. Yeah. Thank you.
Rodrigo, I have the one last question. Do
Yes,
you
sure.
have a concern just with our current user namespace support? We promoted to beta, even GA. Just we didn't solve this stateful set issue, parts issue. Do you have any concern?
Yes. Right now there are a few limitations. As I was saying, for example, some files like etc host or etc resolve.conf are owned by root and the host when you're running with user namespaces. So you cannot change them even if you're rooting the container. And this is an inconsistency with what happens when you're running without user namespaces.
Just on that one though, Rodrigo, if my memory is bad, where would a user desire to change those things? Like in my mind, those files are
yeah. So
controlled.
it's definitely something to argue about, right? Because Kubernetes has several knobs to allow you to change it, but it's also so you can say if you want to change it, you should use the Kubernetes way, or but yeah, it's something that behaves differently when you're using user namespaces. And there are limitations, and I think this is the big one, is that right now we are relying on FS group as it was requested by SIG storage during the exception period. And that creates a limitation because all the files like config maps, secrets files that are mounted will have permission for the group, and that doesn't work with applications like SSH or things like that. So, and even if you specify, like, I want this file to have this specific mode in a config map, when it's mounted, it would not honor that. So I think this is something we should think about before migrating it to beta. And if we switch implementation to IDMAP mounts, all of that will be solved.
Are those gaps that got identified in the review of storage captured in the KEP? Like at least those I think should be captured in the KEP, so that when we come back 2 months from now and are saying, is this ready to promote, that we didn't forget it?
No, I think I only captured them in my KubeCon talk on KubeCon NA, North America. But yeah, I can update the KEP with this.
Thanks. We can capture those kind of things and move forward with the existing one for stateless, I think, hopefully. We can find, actually we can find a solution, also can address together, but I don't think we can, given the time limit, guys.
Yeah, okay, maybe we can do that. I think in any case, I would prefer to change the current functionality to be based on IDMAP mounts before GA. I don't care if it's an alpha or beta, but I think yeah, doing that is good. Should be in like a nice blending, that, and it's like a heavy change, so doing it in alpha might be better.
Yeah, and then there was nothing today in the current feature where the kubelet advertises that it could support user namespace remap pods, right? So like,
no.
I guess the subtlety here is if when moving off of the FS group to IDMAP mounts, we may have to find ways of advertising that you could support host, or you could support user namespace remapping. Am I?
Well, I think it might not be needed, because in the CRI we already send the user namespace with the mapping, so the container runtime can just use that for all the IDMAP mounts, and I think that will be consistent with what we do with, for example, capabilities in the CRI, like, because on the OCI's runtime spec, in the capability front, we allow to set the effective, the ambient, and the bounding set capabilities, and on the CRI we just allow one set of capabilities and we set it to all, and it makes sense because OCI needs more flexibility and the kubelet we don't. So the CRI will already have the mapping, so I think we don't need more CRI changes, and we don't might need to advertise anything else. Like, we can maybe just do something like making sure the mapping has 2 entries, because that is something that container runtimes that don't support volumes will not be able to handle. So in that case, whenever we add supports in the kubelet, we just make the mapping have 2 entries, and that might be hacked. And yeah, it's not pretty, and not, but that should be enough. We don't have any lingering things in our API, like after a few releases, we can just remove it.
I guess my memory was slow right now, because where I was going with this, like, if our implementation depends on a capability that's only available on a certain kernel level, and I can't remember the minimum kernel level we advertise right now, the kubelet would work with, would we have to advertise it as an optional thing that this node can support?
Okay, no, I misunderstood. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I was trying to look at our minimal kernel version.
When you say advertise, it's like documentation, right? Or
right. Does the scheduler need to know that this node could support this pod or couldn't support this pod? And right now I'm trying to look in, I think we say am I looking at the right spot in the code right now? I'm just grepping kube right now to find the min supported kernel version, and I find a variety of fields right now. So just a thing to follow up on.
think this may be difficult, Derek, because I don't think, is there a kernel config for this, Rodrigo? I
No.
don't think there is. Yeah, there is not. And I think in RHEL, we patched it out due to security concerns. So there's no easy way to tell whether it's enabled or not just by looking at the version. Maybe the upstream ones, yes, but on the RHEL side, it'll be different.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking of the broad set of operating systems users would use, you know, the community output here from, and it sounded like with the alternate ID map mount, that wouldn't necessarily be universally supported on every, you know, baseline minimum node that we could run a kubelet on. And so I was just trying to figure out if we have to get, if we go to ID map mounts, will we have to account for being able to advertise that this node could support this concept or not? And, you know, with that comes like a whole host of other complications, but we report the kernel version. My memory isn't good right now, and if the scheduler even could make any decisions just on kernel version. And if you're telling me that's not even the dependable thing to key on, then we should probably figure out what we could key on.
I guess maybe only if vendor knows also manage their operating system, so they maybe know there's the kernel, what is right kernel, have the right configuration, have the fix. So then they only can do it is maybe runtime class can advertise this. It is because since the kernel version is not dependable, and there also have the kernel parameters to show anything kernel config. Maybe the only way it is just vendor, but the people like the running Kubernetes on the random kernel, which is out of their control, then I don't know how we are going to advertise that.
Yeah. And the only thing I was thinking on this from Rodrigo, and I can't remember what we said, was if we put user namespace in conformance in the future, it probably just needs to be able to target the broadest set of operating systems that users might be using, and whether it's a new or old Ubuntu or a new or old RHEL or Fedora or name your thing. I was just trying to think if there was any subtlety there that we need to account for. Or would there ever be a benefit to just fall back on the FS group implementation, had those known limitations for that class of user to avoid that problem? So either way, sounds like we have further discussions to have with SIG storage before we can answer those. So
yeah, I think the fallback, it will also be tricky. Like if you want to implement the fallback, it will be tricky because we need to auto discover from the kubelet, and that is not easy because ID map mount support depends on each file system needs to add support for this. So you need to prove all the we'll need to do some proving of all the volumes that the board will have or something like that, or ask the runtime to create the pod, and if it fails, ask to create with some other configuration. So it starts to get really nasty.
Maybe just have a flag or something and keep it simple. Like if you know to enable it, you enable it.
Right, yeah. But in that, what I was trying to say, like if we want to fall back to some other implementation that doesn't require some kernel features, that will be tricky.
all right. Well, it sounds like we have next steps, and
Yeah.
I think we're all better informed or reminded of the issues. So thanks a lot for bringing that forward, Rodrigo.
Thank you very much.
Kevin, you had the next topic on the dynamic resource allocation. Do you want to share where that's going?
Yeah, so just a quick update on that. We merged the KEP for this just before the 125 enhancement freeze happened, and we decided to delay the implementation to 126. And we weren't sure if we were going to get it in, but last Friday we got an extension approved, and it finally merged as an alpha feature for 126. And as part of this, a new staging repo has been created with a set of helper libraries to help people build resource drivers against the DRA API that has now been merged into the core. And we're also planning on creating a example driver repo that uses these helper libraries to show people how to go about building one of these drivers against the DRA API. I already have an NVIDIA driver that we've written as kind of in lockstep as we were developing DRA to make sure that a real resource driver could actually be implemented. I demoed that here a couple of months ago. And then this example driver will be kind of based off the learnings I've had in building the GPU driver. And I have an outstanding request to create that. But as part of creating the staging repo, the GitHub management team asked us to associate DRA with some official SIG Node subproject. And I looked through the list of subprojects that we have, and none of them really fit for what DRA is. And so kind of the question I wanted to bring to this meeting is, should we try and reuse one of these subprojects? And if not, should we create one? And what should this be called? Should it be called dynamic resource allocation or something a bit more general under which dynamic resource allocation, these repos associated with it could fit?
I guess I'm fine with a new sub-project. Naming is hard, so I think.
Yeah. One thing I noticed when I was looking through these, there's some of them that are either outdated or not maintained. Like for example, the one near the bottom, node resource topology -API. If you click on it, when I open that repo, it's just an empty repo with nothing in it.
Yeah, so I don't know if Swati's here, but that was a new repo that hadn't yet been populated, but it was being done as a part of the topology aware scheduling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have actually a few PRs open to populate that, but I haven't been able to get anyone's attention on that.
So I guess what I was kind of wondering is that's the one where, I mean, this doesn't fit directly into that, but if we had just a general subject project around resource management or something, then this would fall in that. So would dynamic resource allocation. So would the stuff that Marlo and the others from Intel are working on, if and when any new repos ever fall underneath that. So my proposal would either be to add a specific dynamic resource allocation subproject, just like these others, or have a general resource management one that listed all of them.
Yeah, I was trying to think like when we did device plugins, right? It was just an tree thing in the kubelet.
Yeah, we didn't need
the
these separate
sub-project
repos.
apparatus and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe the first thing, like I think I trust you to pick a name, Kevin, that you think works well, and let's just go for it. And
Okay.
it sounds like Marlo is a +1ing to a particular choice. So maybe
Okay, I don't
have a strong opinion.
PR.
Maybe if you and Marlo can come to consensus that you have the,
Okay.
go for it.
And then I'll open a PR then against this page to add it, and then I'll ping you to review it, if that makes
Cool.
sense.
Yeah, and then Swati, I guess I'm confused on how we were blocked on populating that repo. I was just clicking through it. Are we actually blocked on populating that repo? Is there something we need to do to unblock?
So, yeah, so I have a PR open that kind of bootstraps the repo per se, sets up all the things that you need for bots, populates owners and everything. So that's the main PR that we need to merge. And then following that, we'll have to merge the API itself. I wanted to get the bootstrapping API merged before we move on to the API, because it might require, back and forth and API reviews. So I can just paste here the PR if people want to have a look.
Yeah, I guess I was wondering, I was looking in the actual repo itself. I didn't see any pull requests. So if you had something that was blocked, I mean, I wasn't aware of anyone being blocked, and we should try to find out.
Because this is a staging repo, we have to create PRs directly to Kubernetes, and we can't really create a PR directly to this repo.
So you probably need someone with approval rights in staging.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's try to unblock.
Yeah, and Swati,
Yeah.
would it make sense to absorb this under a general resource management sub-project, do you think, or do you
Yeah,
feel
I think
strongly about keeping it the way it is?
no, I think it makes sense to put it under resource management sub-project.
Okay, yeah. Then I'll think about it a little bit, maybe if that's the actual name we want, but whatever I come up with, I'll keep this in mind as something that would be pulled underneath it.
Yeah, and then just the other stuff that comes with being a sub project is like owners and that type of thing. Like I'm assuming Kevin and Swati and others, maybe you could iron out how you would want the structure there to be, and just maybe come back with some recommendation. But I don't feel I need to be involved. I don't think Dawn needs to be involved. It feels like you all are capable of finding the right outcome on that one.
Okay, great, thanks.
Was there, I forget what the owner's structure was for the pod resource topology one. I don't remember who was involved on that, but if you do combine, I would just make sure you merge everyone's powers appropriately.
Yeah, I think that's what he was mentioning. I think that's somehow embodied in these PRs that she's currently blocked on.
Yeah. Did you paste that in the Zoom chat, Swati, or are you finding the PR?
Sure. Yeah, I have it. It needs to be rebased, so I'll do my due diligence on that. But just so people have the pointer to the PR, pasted that on Zoom chat.
I have to look. I don't even know if I have power to merge this for you. So you would need approval from someone, not me.
One more issue with this PR is one of the jobs fails because the bot does not take into consideration the PR itself. And I think this was there was similar issue with dynamic resource allocation.
Yeah, we had the
So
same issue when DIMS was able to override the test for us and then get it merged and then do some magic to get it to then start passing tests after that.
yeah,
Yeah, I
so
think-
we'd have to do that here as well. Anyway, I'll rebase this PR and I'll ping. Again, I don't know who has the privileges to
I
help me
think
out.
Dims is who you could probably best work with. You're looking at approvers
I
on
think-
staging. But
Yeah, I think Dims already had a look and he was looking for some sort of approval from the Node team, just in the sense that can we move ahead with this? So if people can just put in their act that it's okay to proceed in this direction, I think that would unblock me.
oh, okay. I didn't see that on there. All right. Well, I'm glad we had the discussion so we can unblock you, Swati, and I'll act on here now that we discussed this. So. Okay. All right. Let's see the rest of the agenda. Anything else, Kevin, you want to bring up related to this topic?
Nope, that was it. Thanks.
Cool. Then Sergey, do you want to talk about the sidecar work group?
Yeah, thank you. We've been discussing during the previous release that we want to start a sidecar work group early so we can get proposal approved before 127. So we formed this group and we had the first meeting just before this meeting. Next meeting will be the same way, like Tuesday at 9 Pacific. Yeah, you can read all the discussions we had, and we started with outlining all the rejected designs, so it will be easier for us to design something new and propose it here. So yeah, if you want to join it, please join. Attendance was amazing. We had like 35 people join that meeting. It's more than currently on this call, and a lot of interest to the topic.
Yeah, and then was it recorded? I have a week-long event here at Red Hat that I've had to step out of for this one, so I unfortunately wasn't able to step out for 2 hours. But if I wanted to catch up, was it recorded?
Yes, I use the same Zoom account, but a different meeting. So it's among the recordings in SIG Node.
All right, so I'll get through it as I upload to YouTube probably next week and catch up then. So thanks a lot. All right, excellent. And then I think that's it for topics that were laid on the agenda. I don't know if Vinay is here. I did get through his in-place resizing PR, and I thought it appeared to meet everything that I had previously looked at, and aside from Bobby's last comment, which I think could be handled in beta, it looked okay. So I'll catch up with Vinay on that one separately, but hopefully we can unblock that as soon as possible now. Any other general announcements or things that folks want to bring up?
Yeah, next week is a short week in the US, so we may have lower attendance than usual. We may consider if there will be no agenda, maybe we need to cancel. And
Okay.
another thing is, I think we failed to do analysis of all the caps going before code freeze. So maybe a week after the next, we can go through the caps for 126 and see where they landed.
All right, we got 1+1 to cancel for next week. So if there's no strong objections, we can just assume that, and I'll make the update. All right, well, thanks so much for the discussion today. And for folks in the US, have a good holiday, and we'll see you back in, I guess, 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.
Great, thanks.